Well, this is going to be pretty disjointed. That shouldn't really be a big surprise to anybody that's watched me regularly at all. I was originally going to talk about English, and the title of this video was going to be, Is English Stupid? But I realized, I think luckily, that just because I live in the United States and we call side spin on the cue ball English generally, doesn't mean that's the proper term. I think a better term would be side spin or side. And this is not going to be what is side spin for dummies video, but I do have to cover what it is. This is just in case, and help me get my thoughts together a little bit. If I hit the cue ball on the vertical axis, there's no side spin, and so the cue ball is only spinning on that vertical axis. If I hit the cue ball on the right, then I'm putting right hand side spin on the ball, counterclockwise side spin on the ball. Left would be the opposite. Okay, this concludes the primer version of this video, I think. What I want to talk about, though, is, well, several things. It's a pretty complicated thing when you start putting side spin on the cue ball. There's an awful lot of things that happen or can happen or even can be made to not happen if you start using side spin. I think everybody knows, especially since I just had that nice little primer, is if I put right side spin on this cue ball and I shoot it like in that direction, it's not going to bounce off. Well, it's not going to bounce off like a photon off of a mirror. We've discussed that. It's not even going to bounce off like a regular kick would. If I have right side spin, it's going to open up and hit more in this direction, like this. Duh, right? If I shoot the exact same angle, I'm going to pretend I have the same angle. With left side spin, it's going to come off with that kind of angle. So, a spinning cue ball absolutely changes the direction that cue ball takes after it hits a rail. I believe it also changes the direction the cue ball takes by a little bit after it hits an object ball. It's the same kind of forces are happening. If a spinning cue ball comes in and hits this ball, it's going to change the direction a little bit. I don't know if that's ever been measured or even discussed. It may not be relevant for pool, to be honest, but it absolutely changes the direction the cue ball takes off of the rail. The other thing it does, you guys probably all saw this, is with right side spin, it's like it speeds that cue ball up. It sped it up. And now I'm going to change the angle. It went into that rail at one speed and came off of the rail at a faster speed. In the United States, we call this running English, right side spin on that kind of a shot. In other parts of the world, they might call it like helping side or something like that. I'm not sure. With left-hand side spin, it slows the ball down. A little bit hard to see from that kind of an angle, but it does slow the ball down. Let's see if I can. I don't know why I have a 14 out there. Going to a rail with left side spin. Yeah, it's really kind of hard to tell, especially because this cloth is fairly new. But it does slow the cue ball down. I think this is fairly basic, and I really think most people that have gotten this far into this video know this kind of stuff. I may not have any new information. That's how optimistic I am about this. Another thing that English, see, I did it. I know I'm going to call it English a lot more often than I want to. I want to say side spin. In my country, I already had a war with England. I don't want to have another one. Certainly not over some dumbass on YouTube using the wrong word for side spin. Another thing that side spin will do is it will throw the object ball. If the cue ball comes in and say hits this 14, so it's directly lined up for this pocket, ghost ball, if I'm playing ghost ball, right, and it hits right there at that spot, but it's spinning, let's say it's spinning clockwise, which would be left English, and I hit it at that ghost ball position. I don't know if you could tell from that angle, it's kind of tough. It threw it that way a little bit. Now the amount of throw that you get, it's going to vary a lot depending on how dirty, old, dirty, grungy, whatever the balls are. But there is an effect there. I was trying to think of some examples for this, and I'm horrible at examples. I know for a fact that I've mentioned how horrible I am in examples. One of the things that I was kind of playing with was something like this. So you have to use your imagination a little bit here, I guess. Imagine that this 7 is not quite straight in the side pocket. If I hit the 7 dead in the face, which I can do, just barely, the 14's almost in my way, the 7's going to hit about right here. If I shoot and hit this 7 dead in the face, but with left side spin, you got to hit it dead in the face, Dave. Told you I was bad at examples. I may just have to do this with my hand. I'm only going to try it one more time. Seriously doubt anybody watches any of my videos to see me miss a bunch of shit. That'd be a really odd fetish to have. I guess I don't want to judge people though. But this looks like about the same shot. So I can hit the 7 dead in the face, but I can't cut that 7 into the corner pocket. There was a cat. I don't know if you saw that. But I can put left side spin on this ball and throw it in the pocket. And this can come in handy on shots like that. If I have the same setup, it's actually pretty close to the same setup. Not quite. But for some reason, this time, I want to put right side spin on the ball. I'm bad at examples. Maybe I've got a cluster that I want to make sure that I bust up. So what I want to do is I want to put right side spin on this. So the cue ball hits the 7 in, then hits the rail, and then goes over with the counterclockwise spin and busts these 2 out. With this, because I cannot cut that 7. All I can do is hit it dead in the face. I cannot make it with right side spin. I can't do it. The only way it can be done, and I can't do it, would be like with a jump shot. Then maybe I could do it, but what would happen if I try to see, my brain won't even let me try it. Because my brain's like, no, you dumbass, you cannot break that cluster out and make the 7. That's what my brain is telling me right now. So I'll use my hand. If this ball comes in here with right side spin, which is counterclockwise spin, and hits this 7 dead in the face, it's going to throw the 7 even more into the rail than it was already going. That means the 7's not going to go in. Yeah, so, the side spin helped out on one shot and hurt me on another shot. Just examples is all they are. Another thing, this was going to be kind of hard for me to explain even to myself, but there's been all these books and videos and professional instruction and all that, and they will all say that the cue ball path off of the object ball, or the cue ball is going to hit the 4, put the 4 in the pocket, the cue ball's path is going to be on the tangent. You guys have probably heard of the tangent line before. Anybody watching this that's still awake probably has. It'll go on the tangent if it's a sliding ball. In other words, if it doesn't have any follow or draw on it, any top spin or screw on it for you, those of you in Britain, I don't know what y'all call follow, probably top spin. Anyway, and that's true. There is a tangent line, and a sliding cue ball will follow that tangent line. But what they don't ever mention is that because of contact-induced throw, which I just got done talking about, I'm sorry, spin-induced throw, which I just got done talking about, too many terms, man. If I put right side spin on this cue ball, I know it's going to throw the 4 more in that direction, which means I don't have to cut the 4 as much. I can hit it a little more fully. And because I just hit it a little bit more fully, my tangent line has changed. Does that make any sense? So if I'm going to cut this ball like normal, then I'm lining up straight in, and there's my tangent line runs. Looks like maybe an inch this side of that diamond, if I'm going to just cut it like a normal person. But if I'm going to throw it in with right side spin, as I said, I can hit it a lot more fully. And even if it's a sliding ball, it's going probably about at that point of that side pocket. I didn't put any draw on that ball. All I did was put right side spin on that ball. Now I've lost track of where the 4 was, but the same kind of thing can happen with left side spin. Like in this case, let's say, bad examples, let's say I wanted to, for whatever reason, I wanted the cue ball to be about here. And then I wanted to send the cue ball here, 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 up here with some speed, right? Like 3 rails for speed. Don't know what, pretend there are other balls on there that I'm trying to go 3 rails for speed with. And if I'd gotten this angle, then I could have done that. But I didn't get that angle, because I suck. I got this angle. They're like, man, I'm a little bit too straight to be doing that. If I put left side spin on this ball, which is clockwise spin, it's going to throw the 4 ball more in that direction than it would otherwise be wanting to go. That means that I can hit the 4 more thin. I can hit the 4 where like a natural cut might put it right here at about this point, but because of that left side spin, it's going to throw it into the pocket. And that way I can get some more speed on the shot. You have to pretend I make the shot. You have to do that a lot. But I don't know if that made any sense. If it didn't, I'm sorry. I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody has, except, why are you such a dumbass, Dave? I don't want to answer those. I've answered those too much. If I want to look at it from this angle, I've got the balls on the dots this time. If I shoot this forward, this is a sliding ball. Then there's my tangent line. It looked like about right there. If I shoot it with just the left side spin, I'm going to throw the 4 that way, remember? So I don't have to cut it as thinly. I can hit the 4 more full and bring my tangent line up, what, 3 or 4 inches? The effect isn't a lot, but it is an effect, and it does come in handy, I believe. And I think it's something nice to know. Because if you get down there and measure that tangent line out, you're like, I'm going to get that breakout or that shape or whatever. But then you put English on it, or side spin on it that you didn't account for, and you miss that English, you miss that shape. I keep saying English, man, sorry. You missed that shape, or you missed that breakout because you didn't take into account the fact that your side spin was going to change that tangent, at least indirectly. This gives me right side spin. This time I have to hit the 4 more thinly than I would have otherwise. So my tangent line is going to go further towards the camera, closer to the camera. These are also harder shots for me. think for almost everybody. See, I was almost a diamond down that way. I think for almost everybody they're harder. Inside English shots. And I have a theory about that. Probably, of course I do. I have lots of theories. One of the theories, I guess the main one is that there's just another phenomenon called contact-induced throw. And that would be if I shoot ghost ball at this 4-ball to cut it down there, and I put this 4 dead smack in the middle of that ghost ball. I hit it perfectly, in other words. That 4 is still going to be thrown that way a little bit, just a little bit, because of the contact-induced throw. Whereas before I was talking about spin-induced throw or side spin-induced throw. The 4 is going to get thrown that way just a little bit. And in some cases, depending on speed and the condition of the balls and all that, it might be thrown far enough to miss the shot. If I have, in this case, okay, left side spin on this cue ball, it's going to want the spin-induced throw is going to want to throw the 4 more in that direction. So now I've got the contact-induced throw trying to throw the 4 this way, but the spin-induced throw is trying to throw it that way. And in theory, those two can sometimes cancel each other out or come close. So it is easier to shoot a cut shot with a little bit of outside side spin. That's what we call it in the States. We call it outside English in the States. Left side spin in this case, because I'm cutting to my right. And I think most people probably just learn that, maybe just by instinct, that it is easier to cut a ball to the right with some left side spin. And that's exactly why, I believe, is because it can help to counteract that contact-induced throw and make the shot behave more like the ghost ball would indicate it's going to. Whatever aiming method you're using, if it's an accurate one, it's not taking contact-induced throw into account. It's not taking spin-induced throw into account. But it kind of helps them to even out. But this is a shot to my left, so it'll be just a little bit of right side spin on the shot. Right side spin on this shot. For the same reason, counteracting the contact-induced throw that wanted to push that object ball further this way. I'm counteracting it with some right side spin that wanted to push the object ball this way. They meet somewhere in the middle and maybe close enough to make the ball in the pocket. Pretty cool shit. This is, I think the opposite of that. If I had this shot that I had a little while ago, and now for some reason I want to put right side spin on this ball. Counterclockwise spin on the cue ball. See, I'm playing in one pocket and my other balls are down there and I want to get the cue ball down there. I can do that fairly easily with some right side spin on the cue ball. Then it will hit this rail. That right side spin will change the angle and speed it up and send it down there. The problem is you also got to make the ball. Last time I checked, you also have to make the ball. And in this case, I've got contact-induced throw, trying to throw the 8 this way, because it's a cut to my right. And now, because I've got right side spin on the cue ball, I've also got spin-induced throw, trying to throw the 8 this way. So now they're ganging up on me is what they're doing. And what this means is, for me, I kind of have to make a conscious effort to try to cut this 8 about right here. Try to overcut this 8 ball, because I know that the right side spin and the contact-induced throw are going to push it back in that direction, hopefully back in, so it goes in the pocket. After all that ran, let me see if I can actually make the shot. Again, this is with right side spin on the ball. Overcutting the 8 just a little bit. Yeah, and actually, so the 8 made a lyre out of it. It went exactly where I aimed it. I always like to make lyres out of me, but I don't care. So, I have been playing for 800 billion years or something like that. So a lot of times, even though I say I'm doing something, you know, my subconscious, my inner pool player, if you will, is like, no, we're gonna do something else. So I was probably making some type of adjustment. My conscious brain was like, aim it towards that point, Dave. And my subconscious was like, oh, okay, well, aim it towards that point. That's not what I'm trying to do. There, I made one. And you see what the cue ball did. Those shots are tougher for, I think, almost everybody. Certainly when they're starting out, inside side spin shots or inside English in the United States, those are just harder shots. And I think that's the reason why. I'm almost done with my rounding. Can you believe that shit? I wanted to talk about the different ways that I can put side spin on the cue ball. And you would think, well, gee, Dave, you just hit it to the right or hit it to the left of the vertical axis. You know, and this is true. This is what you do. But how do you do that? I'm not 100% sure how to approach this discussion, especially with what looks like a kitten hair on my table. There we go. So, if I want to put right side spin on the stick, just for whatever reason, just a very slight cut to my left, I want to put some right side spin on it for the hell of it. There's 3 ways I can do that. Instinctively, just because I've been playing for a long time, I'm just going to get up here, I'm just going to get lined up with that right English. And you know, that something subconscious was happening up here. I knew I had to make all these adjustments for spin and throw and all that stuff. I knew I had to make all these adjustments, and it just happened while I was up here. So then I get up here and I got lined up with right English. And in theory, put the ball in. Now see, now the 6 is making a liar out of me. Hang on a second. So, you can get down. I got a case yesterday, and it's got all these little taggy things and all this on it. And now my kitten is like, oh wow, that is the coolest thing to chew on ever. I don't want her to tear up my case when I haven't had it for 24 hours. Anyway, so I get lined up with this right side spin, and it goes straight into the rail again. So something's wrong with that ball. Then we'll do this one instead. Yeah, that's good. So that's what's supposed to happen. So, like I said, I was getting into the ways to apply side spin. That, I believe, is the normal way, mainstream way, I guess, to do it. And that is just know that you have to adjust and you just get lined up that way. After a while, after a long enough period of time, you just get lined up that way. Now, I remember when I first started playing, if I had a shot like maybe about like this, and I wanted to put right hand side spin on this cue ball, or left, it really doesn't matter, but I would have to make a conscious adjustment effort with this shot. I was shooting with a McDermott D12 back there, and I would just know that I have to, like, if anybody was looking at me, standing behind me, they might think I'm not even going to hit the 9 at all. But because of the way the ball would squirt, I would just know I'd have to make that kind of an adjustment, and I missed the ball. It was a hard shot though, so I don't care. What was I getting at? Oh, I think that's the main way people put side spin on, is they just do it. After a long enough period of time, they understand, at least subconsciously, about contact-induced throw and spin-induced throw, and they just get lined up correctly. Or eventually they start getting lined up correctly. Another way to do it, and this is, I don't want to say it's for weird people, but it's for people that have a hell of a lot more time on their hands than I do. And this would be like the pivot method, one of the 2 pivot methods. There are 2 ways that I could do a pivot method to put English side spin, on this knot. One is I could get lined up like I'm aiming straight at that ghost ball, get in my, and then I could pivot on my bridge until I get to that left hand English point. And then at that point, stroke straight. With some cues, I would get lined up straight at that same point, same ghost ball, but I would do this hand. So now I'm pivoting on my grip hand. Some people will call this front hand English when you're doing it like this. Some people will call it this backhand English when they're doing it like this. And then there's at least one guy out there making videos about combining the two. If you do, and I'm not making fun of him, he's just one of those people who's got a lot more time on his hands than me. He will say, well, if you do 3/4 of a tip with front hand English and then do another quarter of a tip with backhand English and then stroke straight, then you're good to go. Okay, fine. I mean, he demonstrates the shit and it seems to work. It just seems like an awful lot of effort to me when I think the goal is play long enough and then just get lined up right and then put the ball in. But anyway, one of the things that I found that's interesting though is if I'm going to shoot this shot, even the way that I just shot it, just be up here, get lined up, and then overshoot it. I'm doing all of that pivot stuff. The thing is, I'm just doing it in my head. I'm just doing it in my head when I'm standing up here. I think it ends up being exactly the same setup, exactly the same contact point on the cue ball and all that. If I get down here and I do a little bit of front hand English, a little bit of back hand English, stroke straight, I think that ends up being exactly the same as if I just got set up correctly to begin with. The difference is, if I just get set up correctly to begin with, and I'm not thinking about any of that pivot stuff, then the rest of my body is in alignment with the shot. Does that make sense? If I get lined up to do this, my feet and everything is in alignment for the shot to put it in correctly, except for the 10. Now, I won't have to throw the 10 on the floor. But if I have a shot and I'm thinking about this front hand English and or backhand English, I may not have the rest of my body lined up, especially if I bend over first and then start applying this English. See, I'm saying English, I mean side spin. I start applying this and this. I haven't moved my feet at all, so I could be just a little bit out of kilter a little bit. I don't like that. I don't like, pool's a hard enough game as it is, I believe. Very last thing that I want to talk about here, and you guys that are still awake, there's probably like 2 of you, I know who you are like, yay, last thing. And this isn't even a whole lot of a last thing, but it does count. There is a school of thought, and I'm actually kind of one of them, although I don't really use it, that say that. Another way of putting side spin on a cue ball is not simply by where you hit that cue ball and what speed and all that. This other school of thought endorses hitting this cue ball with a swiping motion. Instead of just picking a spot, however you do that, with pivoting or getting set up naturally, whatever, instead of picking a spot and hitting it, they will endorse more of a swiping motion. So, like that. And if you all could see that, I hope you could. And the theory is that You know, the tip's not in contact with the cue ball for very long at all. Every bit of side spin that cue ball gets is because of very small contact time. And I saw a number once, let's say it's, you know, a millisecond. Let's say it's a millisecond. I have no idea what it is. But if I shoot English side spin, damn it, I keep doing that. Side spin the normal way, or one of the normal ways, then that tip is in contact with the cue ball for 1 millisecond. 0.1 millisecond. What did I say? Whatever I said. Let's say I said 1. But if I have a swiping motion, if I'm putting the side spin on with a swiping motion, the proponents of this will say that, well, maybe now it's 2 milliseconds, which is like double the amount of time. You know, there's one, I mentioned in a video once that back when I was active in the internet, there were normal people, and there were weirdos, and there were science guys. And I also mentioned that a lot of the science guys were assholes. Well, one of the science guys that I felt like was an asshole, might still be for all I know, would say, yeah, but, you know, 2 milliseconds isn't long enough to affect anything. And meanwhile, I'm sitting there thinking, 2 milliseconds versus 1 millisecond is twice as damn long a contact on the cue ball. And you're going to say that twice as much contact time is not going to make any difference? He didn't back any of this stuff up. He just said, well, it's not going to make enough difference. It's not long enough time. Okay, asshole. Anyway, that's just my opinion. I'm sure it's the nicest guy that ever lived. I mean, I'm sure that I'm on his Christmas card list every year, and they've just been getting lost in the mail every year. But I do believe that I can get more side spin on this cue ball with that swiping motion than I could have gotten with just a regular, you know, quote unquote normal way of putting side spin on the ball. I do believe this. The reason I don't do it is because you're doing a swiping motion. And for me, that means I don't ever really know where I'm hitting the cue ball. It becomes way more of a feel type of a situation than even I'm prepared to accept at this point in my career. I would rather hit the cue ball where I want, so I can pay attention to what happens and maybe adjust where I want to hit the cue ball next time. I would rather do that than be like right side spin, left side spin, and because that's the way it kind of seems to me. I know a guy that really good player, really good banker, lines everything up with high top, like follow. And he does all his practice strokes like that. And then on his actual real swing, then he goes down and he hits the cue ball left, right, top, right, whatever he wants with the swiping motion. Plays really well, banks really well. That's not something, it's not a talent that I have, or really a desire that I have right now is to, I don't necessarily want to get the maximum amount of side spin. I guess that's what I'm saying. I think I can get more with that swiping motion. But do I need more? You know, a little while ago I said that was the last thing I was going to talk about. Well, I wasn't lying, but I am going to talk about something else. Because this damn video has already drug on for so long. That what's a little bit extra? In 2000 and, well, let's just call it 2001, I guess. It was probably about that. I bought my first low squirt shaft, Predator 314, and I put it on my Sean R12, which is my oldest possession, and it was my first low squirt shaft. And I mentioned that I used to shoot, well, a lot of people shoot things with outside English to help counteract that contact-induced throw. And that's what I did for a long time. When I got that Predator shaft, I had to make some adjustments on that because the squirt characteristics are different. I played with the Predator shafts until 2012 or so. I played with Jacoby Ultra shafts after that, again low squirt shafts, until 2019. So for almost 2 decades I'm playing with low squirt shafts. Marketing calls them low deflection shafts, which is flat out wrong. Flat out wrong. For a low deflection shaft, it would have to be like a piece of steel or something. The shaft wouldn't deflect at all, and the cue ball would squirt like crazy. A high deflection shaft would be like, I don't know, like a piece of rope or something. It would get out, it would deflect like crazy, so the cue ball wouldn't have to. The cue ball probably wouldn't move very much because it's a piece of rope. But I think, anyway, anytime you ever hear about low deflection, what they really mean is low squirt. That's what they mean. And there's marketers out there that talk about zero deflection, and they mean zero squirt, and they're still wrong in another way, because there's no such thing. There's no such thing as a cue shaft, stick, person, whatever, hitting a cue ball with side spin where there's not going to be any deflection of the cue ball off of what path it would otherwise take. There's no such thing. Anyway, what the hell was I saying? Oh, what I was saying was, in 2019 I bought a P shower, fell in love with the hit, immediately switched from all these low squirt shafts that I had back to a stock shaft, to that P shower. And then I bought another P shower. And then I bought another P shower. And I've won a Scruggs, and I bought a Carmelli, and I won a Carmelli, and I bought the Southwest, all with stock shafts. I've replaced all of my low deflection shafts and all of my cues back with the stock shafts. But when I did that, I had to make some adjustments. I was so used to low squirt, and all of a sudden I had shafts that were, well, it seemed to me like they were squirting like crazy. They really weren't. They were just squirting a hell of a lot more than I was used to. And I got in the habit there for a while, trying to get used to it. Just with the P shower back then, getting used to the P shower. Shooting shots without any side spin. If I wasn't 100% sure that I needed side spin, then I would just try it without the side spin. What's the worst that could happen? I'm just down here in my basement practicing, you know. Do I need to put left side spin on this 15 to hold for the 1? To draw back a little bit and hold for the 1? Do I need to do that? Don't know. So I would shoot this kind of thing and I would find out. Because without any side spin on the cue ball, I did not have to worry about, I don't know that pocket. Didn't have to worry about squirt at all. There's no squirt if you hit on a vertical axis. There isn't anything. So you don't have to worry about it. There's no contact induced, or there's no spin induced throw. It makes the shot so much simpler. So I think that's the last thing I want to say was, well, I got a lot of books and tapes and shit, and especially in the olden days, they would say, don't use any English or side spin unless you absolutely need to. And then they would go on to say, the pros don't use it, so don't use it yourself. Anyway, they're all lying. Every one of them's lying. Watch the top guys play it. They're using side spin all the time. They just are. So there's no, oh, if you want to be a good player, don't use any side spin. But you do have to know, or at least have an inkling of what the effects are going to be if you do use side spin, and how to counteract those effects. I actually made a ball in that pocket. Did you see that shit? That's amazing. What I found was, for 3/4 of the shots that I was shooting, my style of play, whatever, I did not need side spin, where I thought I did. I thought, well, I've been shooting this with side spin for 200,000 years, 210,000. So that must be, it must need side spin. It didn't. A lot of shots did not need any. And if I could shoot a ball on vertical axis, straight center ball, draw, or follow, that makes everything a heck of a lot simpler. Still have to deal with that contact-induced draw I was talking about. And there's a cat. She thinks I'm a scratching post, but I'm not. Now she's going to get on the table. Anyway, went all that damn effort, finish the job, get up there. So that's it. This is my side spin video. I've been wanting to make a side spin video for a while, and I haven't because I knew it was going to be a complicated mess, and it is a complicated mess. So I guess I accomplished that goal. Later, guys.